Anyway,
basically, Gary keeps skipping past my parts of my video, like he's done in a few of the other videos he's responded to. Actually, I think every video he's responded to me, he skips past stuff.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, he's just made 4 hours of video, right? And he's complaining because I skip over the part that we've already done, the part where I talk and then he talks and then he talks, and then he finally says something new. And so he's complaining that somebody's saying, "Wait a minute, you got to shorten these videos." This is one court case we're talking about, and you're making 4 hours worth of video. You don't see how that's fucking insane, you lunatic? And then you're going to make an accusation and somehow I'm voiding your fucking your insipid arguments. You just demonstrate how insipid your arguments are. Oh yeah, I'm claiming discrimination, and you're saying we have a right to tax cigarettes. I'm saying the tax is disproportional. Similarly situated people aren't being taxed similarly, as the Supreme Court has mandated. And yet you're saying we can tax. That's one of your brilliant arguments? I'm sorry, that's not a brilliant argument. It's a pile of shit. And all the rest of your arguments are just insults, you fucking creep. But anyway, go ahead, finish.
And I kind of honestly think it's because there's...
No, I don't think you do anything honestly, okay? So I don't think you kind of honestly think anything like that, okay? I'm not afraid of your arguments, but fuck you if you're going to make 4-hour arguments. Fuck you if you're going to sit there and read crap, miles and miles of crap just to say, look, it says here in this document, here's the important sentence. No, instead you just waste everybody's fucking time because you're an obnoxious, arrogant sack of shit, and you're stupid. You're insane is what you fucking are. You're insane.
Arguments he doesn't want to address, because he did that in the very, very, very first time he ever addressed me on YouTube. You know, basically Gary's just kind of a cowardly little shit.
Yeah, whatever. You can't prove that either, jackass. Again, 4 hours of just crap. What did you just say there? Did you make an argument there? Did you explain how the United States Constitution doesn't protect people against disproportionate or what can we say? That the Constitution doesn't exist pretty much explicitly to control the majority, to stop it from stepping on minority interest rights? Yeah, fuck you. Anyway, yeah, I'll pause and move along. All right, the word games continue. So again, there's no doubt about my argument here that cigarette taxes are taxed at a much higher rate than any other vice. And again, he's going to respond with the same tired bullshit. Here it is again.
Alcohol is taxed in those states. I know it is here in Virginia.
There you go. So, yeah, that's not the point, right? The point is it's not taxed at the same percentages. It's not taxed similarly to cigarettes, proportionally. And it's certainly not taxed proportional to the social damage it does. So again, explain the discrepancy between the minority vice status and the majority vice status. Explain why. Why are those two things differently treated?
Yeah, again, I actually went through and compared prices for at least a few items in one of my videos and pointed out that if I cross the border, I pay about $20 or $30 less when it comes to alcohol.
Well, that doesn't even make any sense, right? $20 or $30 less for when it comes to alcohol. You didn't tell us what the amounts were. And again, what is the tax isn't by any means proportional to the tax on cigarettes. If you want to discourage alcohol consumption, just price the poor out of availability. Make a $3,000 tax on beer. Make it so if a guy wants to drink beer on the weekends, he pays $3,000 a year to do it. Then only rich people can do it, and that's the way you want it. Only rich people have liberty, poor people don't. Do the same thing with fattening foods. Anybody who's overweight, obese, okay, by the standard of obese, just tax them $3,000 till they lose weight. That's the America you want to live in. That's the America you think is justified and that you're endorsing. And you're doing it in the context that people who think that's wrong shouldn't have a fair trial in court. They shouldn't get a judge who actually makes a rational decision and explains how it's not discriminatory or how it's not a violation of our fundamental constitutional rights. So fuck you. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
That I, depending on the item, that I would in the state of Virginia where I live.
Yeah, again, so depending on the item. So you just made up shit there, right? We know how much cigarettes cost. I certainly know what I paid for them when I started smoking, $3.33 for a carton of 10 packs of cigarettes. You know, that's 200 cigarettes for $3.33, and we know now for the same brand of cigarettes, it'll cost me $75 in this state. Has alcohol been taxed like that? No. Not even fucking close. Not even close to the same difference.
Yeah. So alcohol is taxed, firstly, and again, alcohol taxes were listed on the New Jersey document that we've all read.
Well, yeah, and again, and here's a tiny percentage of people consuming the one item, and the tax is the fourth highest tax, and much higher than the alcohol tax in terms of the revenues collected. So off the smaller percentage of people, you're collecting more money, and they are committing less of a crime against society. They're less expensive, and they're murdering less children. Yeah. You can't even make the argument for secondhand smoke anymore because all the environments in which there was secondhand smoke, airplanes and restaurants, have been eliminated. So you can't even really make that argument anymore. Fuck you. And such. Alright, so he's basically said that go ahead and tax his liberties. Okay, so go ahead and tax food. We could just weigh people. Yeah, if you're overweight, you pay the tax. You lose weight, you don't pay the tax. That would be the incentive. He said go ahead, tax alcohol 800%. So tax it out of availability. Tax food, being fat. So make being fat, make enjoying alcohol and enjoying cigarettes all liberties that the poor can't enjoy. They certainly couldn't enjoy all three of them at $3,000 each. That would consume all of their income in some cases. Some minimum wage workers obviously couldn't afford to be both fat, an alcohol consumer, and a cigarette smoker. All right, so they would have to give up their liberty to suit your purposes, whatever those insane purposes are. And you said I should go ahead. Well, my attempt was to go ahead. I went to a court and I said, look, this is the Constitution. You might have heard of it. It sort of demands that if you're going to take away my liberty, that you have a cause to do that. That's what Jefferson intended. You have to have a cause to take away liberty. All right, and then when you take it away, you have to take it away equally. You can't take away the liberty from that guy because you don't like him, and then give liberty to that guy because you do like him. That's called discrimination. You can't fucking do that. That's in the Constitution. Okay, that's the basic outline of the document. That's what it's there for. It's there to protect minority interests, okay, from majority extortion and exploitation. Dumb ass. All right, so now he's going to explain. Well, we don't know what he's going to do. Let's just see what he does. He wants to say something. Let's see what he says.
Something here. Yes, some citizens have less rights than other citizens for a variety of reasons, such as felons losing the right to vote.
Right, okay, so smoking cigarettes is some sort of felony, some sort of crime that we should be punished for. Right, okay, so we're just back to the same bullshit. Why isn't alcohol a crime, and why isn't being a fat pig a crime? I don't understand. Why is one thing a crime and one thing not a crime? Well, I guess it's because one thing is a majority thing and the other thing's a minority thing. So again, I will not explain the differential in treatment.
Or felons, people in prison, they don't have freedom of movement. They forfeited some of their rights. So yeah, some citizens have more rights than others, and society wouldn't function if it wasn't the case.
Right, and the argument here is that we should use the tax code to make sure poor people have less liberty than rich people. And you endorse that. Poor people should have less liberty just because they're poor. They just shouldn't have the right. Okay? The same rights. The rights should be something you buy. You should have to pay for them. You don't have them intrinsically. You have to buy them from the government. Why don't you put a tax on condoms? Then you can tax their sex, too. And so only rich people can have sex. Why don't you tax getting sterilized? Because it's only the luxury of the rich to have these medical procedures. Well, yeah, that would even be better, right? Just tax medicine also. Just directly tax it so poor people can't get any of it. So only the rich people can have that luxury, that liberty, the liberty to have their life extended. That should only be something rich people can have. Yeah, we smell you. We smell exactly what you are, and I say, no, thank you. You're not my kind of an American. I'd be happy to sit there and say you shouldn't have any rights because you're willing to give none. I mean, really, there's nothing. It's I fundamentally do not wish to live in a monarchy. I fundamentally do not wish to live in a society that says poor people shouldn't have access to fundamental rights. Luxuries, yeah, they should have to pay for them. Fundamental rights, they shouldn't have to pay for. The fundamental liberty to smoke a cigarette is a human right, in my opinion. It's a right of an individual. Just like smoking pot or some other goddamn thing, that should be their goddamn right in their own goddamn house. You know, when they take it on the street, then you can regulate it. But when it's in their house, fuck you. Mind your own business, creepy. Yeah, that's probably enough. Well, let's see if I don't think he had anything else to say. He's already doing his little handy thing. Yeah, okay. Let's skip me talking again. Alright, said a lot of silly things in a row here. So he's all comfortable with taxing everything else. You know, food and all the alcohol, all that stuff. So yeah, the taxes should be higher on all those things, 800%, whatever. It's not even the point. It doesn't validate your argument here. Your argument that says somehow my lawsuit wasn't valid. That somehow the argument that you basically must tax them all or you can't tax any. The argument is they similarly situated must be similarly treated. That's the law. All right? Argue that law and explain to me how overtly disproportional treatment can be justified under the 14th Amendment and the other amendments that I've explained to you. So you're saying I'm avoiding your proof. You haven't provided any proof. We're not talking about special status candidates or anything else. Give me the time code where you proved that it's not overtly discriminatory to tax similarly situated vices dissimilarly. And by a preposterous amount. Not a small amount, but by a huge amount disproportionately. Go show me where you proved that. Give me the time code for that and I'll go watch it. But I'm not going back through your hours of crap video. Alright? And now you say you have proved that more people have been killed by secondhand smoke. Proved it by what? Because you got some, you've got a statistical analysis by special interest groups? Sorry, not even close to good enough. And if the same analysis tools were used, you could probably find that broccoli or pine trees or some other bullshit they could blame for killing a bunch of people. So that's just bullshit, okay? It's a lie. You have no such kind of proof. You have propaganda, and that's all you have. It's just ludicrous. We know how they've fudged the numbers. We can see how they've cheated the numbers right now. If you're a cigarette smoker, it doesn't matter if you're 500 fucking pounds. When you die of a cardiac, they're going to blame cigarettes. And that's the fraud here. A huge, disgusting fraud. So show me the secondhand smoke victims that get lung cancer. Show me those. And you're not going to find any. Not beyond the margin of error, or even emphysema for that matter. So again, we're back to this made-up crap of some sort of arterial disease that's always created by cigarettes. If it wasn't for cigarettes and automobile exhaust, apparently there's some kind of theory that no one would die of a cardiac. That all these fat people wouldn't have plaque in their fucking goddamn arteries. And it's just a lie. And you should be smart enough to know that. But no, you don't, because you're just a tool for the propagandists. So bravo, tooler. So again, but you don't have any argument. It's a simple argument to make here. Just explain where, in my court case, the judge referenced the word discriminatory treatment in his decision and explained how it wasn't discriminatory. Explain how he did that. He didn't do that. He didn't do what he was required to do. And he threw a whole page of the complaint in the garbage. So explain how he justified the 18-month delay in sending out a notice of the tax. Show me in his decision where he referenced that claim. It's not there, asshole. Ugh, you're just disgusting. So anyway, I'm not arguing for taxation of anybody's individual personal lifestyle choices. When you choose to do something that affects other people, then you have an argument. And again, analysis demonstrates that cigarette smokers do not do that. They die after they've paid their taxes, after they've paid into Social Security, the vast majority of them. And where alcohol does not have that favorable demographic. But anyway, yeah, that's enough. Yeah, again, it says tax junk food. Oh yeah, he said something like people need food to live. They don't need cigarettes. Yeah, people don't need junk food to live. People don't need fattening food to live. So that's just bullshit right there. There's a ton of very easy to access food. Bread is everywhere. You can live on bread. All right. So he said that my description of drunks and murder, the fact that there's an association between drinking and committing crimes, that somehow I'm arguing that people should be able to say I was drunk and therefore I'm not guilty of the crime. I didn't say any such thing. Those two things don't require that conclusion at all. Okay, so that's just bullshit. And clearly he just is obfuscating, he's just running away from the fact that, yes, people will commit more crimes if they're drunk. That's just the truth. Okay? Drinking makes people behave badly. That's one of its side effects. And so if you stop people from drinking, they'll be less likely, there'll be less murders, there'll be less battered women, there'll be less abused children. It's just a fact. I'm not saying people should be stopped from drinking. I'm just saying that it's true that that's another one of the prices we pay for that vice existing. And that should be proportional. If we're going to tax vice, if we're going to open the door to taxing vice, then we have to treat these vice, liberty, interested parties the same. You can't treat one vice holder differently than the other vice holders. Okay? It has to be within a realm of similarly situated being treated similarly. That's the law, as interpreted consistently by the Supreme Court of the United States. All right. So let's see. Then he made some crack about the old cooking turns to sugar, and he said, I said because you chew it. No, it's not about chewing. It's about cooking, asshole. All right? And the argument I was making is that we can't metabolize raw beef. Okay? So we certainly weren't meat eaters before we controlled fire. That would be preposterous. But then the only meat available would be rotting meat. And we know how much we hate rotting meat. I mean, the smell of rotting flesh has got to be one of the most obnoxious smells to the human sense organs. So quite obviously we weren't eating rotten, maggot-infested meat. Ugh, stupid fucker. Then he calls it whining because I was talking about the Jenkins Act being converted. And I said this is onerous. Most people would think it is onerous of government to sit there and manipulate the law that way. Yes, they wouldn't want the laws manipulated and changed. Laws that apply to one thing, all of a sudden they just convert them to apply to something else without the normal procedure of passing a law where you have to submit it as a bill and have the bill approved and go through all that crap. They wouldn't like that somebody just signs a piece of paper and all of a sudden the law means that you go to jail if you're not wearing a seatbelt, for example. Again, I'll use that as an example of how law in this state, it took 2 years to get people comfortable with the idea that their law was going to change. And yet they expected people to know that they rewrote the Jenkins Act when there was no bill passed. It was just attached to some bill. It never talked about in the Congress. There was no speaking whatsoever about it, no debate about it. It just happened in one of the bills. It's just shoved in there. No public discussion of it, and people are supposed to know that all of a sudden a law that applied to truck drivers all of a sudden now applies to buying cigarettes when you're on vacation, and that now you're supposed to go home to your home state and register and show them that you bought some cigarettes in another state, and I'll voluntarily pay my tax. Yeah, that's pretty. I think most people would find that really offensive if they knew it took place. But people don't care, and that's quite obvious. People like you don't give a fuck, and so you should get back what you give. Other people who used to give a fuck should stop giving a fuck and just say, yeah, if they're going to fuck me, then fuck them. Okay, yeah, go. I don't want to hear about your fucking rights. Let's drive this shit fucking country into the goddamn toilet, and then we can clean fucking goddamn house. Yeah, hard. All right, so let's go to, this is a response to, I'm still making this, the fundamental argument, which is why the differential in treatment. Let's see what he says to that.
Gary's sad.
Yeah, he believes it's unequal protection. So anyways, this is...
Yeah, equal protection of the laws. Suck it.
Suck it. So that's his description, explanation of how it's constitutionally consistent for a majority to exploit or treat differently people with a minority interest, a minority liberty. So if you're an atheist in this country, he's just said, suck it. Okay? If religious organizations get free tax benefits and other benefits for, they can hide their donations and all this other stuff, he thinks that's the way it should be. Atheists should be treated differently. They shouldn't be allowed to organize freely. They should be taxed when they organize. And suck it is the answer he'll give you. He says the court should say, suck it. They shouldn't explain how that's constitutional. They should just say, suck it. Well, suck it, fucker. I can't wait to just say, suck it. And just go ahead. Say, advocate for something. And I'll just use you as a reverse barometer. Okay? Anybody who supports this fucker, okay, any kind of people that support this fucker, their kind deserves to get every ounce of contempt and hostility and oppression and exploitation. He clearly does not believe in equal, fair, just treatment under the law. He believes the law is the majority's owns the law. The majority owns the country. They should be able to put in God we trust on our money. They should be able to tell us we must pray to fetuses. That is their right. Well, I say it's not their right. Fuck you. You suck. You really do. You really, really, really suck. All right, so a little bit more on this Jenkins Act thing. So he's just mocking the whole idea of this ignorance of the law thing and comparing it to murder or some other established law that people do have notice of. So the fact is, ignorance of the law is important if there is no public notice. That's the whole problem. So it's if there is no public notice that a law has been changed, ignorance of the law is reasonable. Okay, once again, that's common law standards. People are judged based on the reasonableness of their action. Did they have a reason not to be aware of something, or a reason not to do a certain thing, or to take a certain precaution? It has to do with negligence and a lot of other legal standards. That's common law, and that's part of our basic law. So, of course, if the government passes a law in secret, that is, there is no public debate, there is no public notice that the law has been changed, then yes, there is an obligation for them to announce it somewhere to expose people to knowledge of that. If a regular citizen is under no obligation to read every congressional bill to see if a federal law has been converted into a fly swatter for cigarette smokers. And again, the standard would be similarly situated people need to be treated similarly. You're saying that people who were given overt public notice that the seat law has changed, the law will be changed, and yet there was such a whine and cry that they had to change the law because everybody was so upset that they couldn't deal with this seatbelt law. So here's a minor change, a minor inconvenience to people's lifestyles, and yet they get 2 years of probation. And cigarette smokers, there's no public notice, no written notice, no notice on cigarette cartons, no notice anywhere that the law has now been changed, the federal law, and that now you will be spied on every time you buy a pack of cigarettes by mail order or the Internet. Those were the two things it applied to. And you didn't even respond to the fact that the Internet exemption to sales tax, why was this one thing excluded? Why was cigarettes excluded and not alcohol? Why was alcohol allowed to be sold without sales tax and cigarettes not? Again, similarly situated people treated dissimilarly. It's against the United States Constitution, and that's what the Supreme Court has said. This case is exactly that argument. It's provable, and it wasn't given a fair hearing. That's the argument here. The argument wasn't heard fairly. The argument wasn't ruled on fairly. The appeals court wrote no decision, so this is just a lie of yours that this is some sort of resolved law. No, we can see that it's a law they will not allow to be fairly resolved because they are in the wrong, and it's overt and aggressively in the wrong. So you're just, that's the slime of these people. So again, there's no expectation that anybody would read every congressional bill to see if a federal law has been changed that affects them personally. No judge would ever put any citizen under that obligation as being their reasonable responsibility. So you're just full of shit once again.
At the state and local level. So yeah, Gary, maybe you should fucking start a petition and have them change the law to require to be, say, they have to submit the tax within 3 months or something to make them.
Yeah, well, the standard's already written into their bylaws of their own organization. The point is I wasn't allowed the opportunity to subpoena that information. I'm saying that it's already written into their own internal rules, and if those rules would be published, okay, it could be seen that it's against their own rules to wait 16 months to notify somebody of a tax liability. And it is not fact that they can wait 10 years. It is not the truth. It was in my complaint. I wrote it in my complaint, and the judge ignored the subject. Explain why he had a right to ignore the subject.
Get off their ass and do it quicker. But it still doesn't make the fucking law illegal.
Well, it makes it, the point is, it's a lawsuit, shithead. You said go write a petition. I don't need to write a petition. I petitioned my government through my right to legal redress. I did what I'm supposed to do as a citizen. I filed a lawsuit indicating that I think their conduct is against their own rules and in turn against state law. They're not allowed to behave that way. I say it's already written into the rules of their conduct, their guidelines, and I say the United States Constitution provides no right to have some sort of unlimited negligence. No, there is a refinement and a confinement by a reasonable standard, by common standard. So if this standard of 16-month notice is twice as much as any other state in the United States, well, then I could make the argument that they're out of the reasonable standard. They're beyond the realm they're supposed to be confined within, but I wasn't allowed to make the argument. I did make the argument, but I wasn't allowed to have a decision on the argument. I paid for a decision, and I didn't get fucking one, asshole, and that's the truth. But you call that justice. You pay to get a decision, and you get no decision. And that's justice by your standards, because you're an unconstitutional, un-American motherfucking piece of shit. Sooner we can shove you in. This isn't even worth the trouble, but I'll do it. Okay, so you went on about the 45 check thing, like I shouldn't find that offensive that public servants can be totally outrageous in their conduct, just totally inefficient and unfunctional, and every citizen should want their public servants to be complete assholes and not complain about it. No, I'm going to complain about it. I didn't write that in, that's not part of the lawsuit, jackass. You stay on the lawsuit, shithead. The fact that I have other opinions about government incompetence is not part of this discussion. Now, you think government should oblige people to write 45 checks to pay a bill? Well, I don't think so, okay? If somebody owes a bill, I think they should be able to write one check and pay their fucking bill, all right? I mean, if you had to go to a restaurant and pay for each item, you had to write a separate credit card purchase for the soda and your food and your appetizer, and you'd say, that's a silly business. I'm not going to go there again. They're retarded. All right? And for a government, we don't have the right to go somewhere else, so we have an obligation to point out when they're grotesquely incompetent. And that's a sign of grotesque incompetence when you expect people to write 45 checks. Anyway, so then he called me a tax dodger again. And that's really not the subject. Technically, I didn't know the Jenkins Act existed, so I certainly couldn't be violating a law I didn't know existed. And I felt, in my opinion, I'm paying cigarette taxes in other states. I have a right to buy stuff in another state and move it to this state. Now, if I drove my car to Pennsylvania and bought the cigarettes, that would be the same thing, correct? So now we're going to say that people that live on the border should have advantages that people who don't live on the border should have. And again, I didn't continue to purchase cigarettes from any out-of-state vendor once I knew the Jenkins Act was in existence. So again, you want to say I'm a tax dodger. I'm saying I'm a tax protester. I did what I'm required to do. Okay, I got nailed, and I went to court to protest the tax. And I went there with a valid argument, and I was given nothing in terms of justice. I was given a lying criminal as a judge who wouldn't recuse himself when I already had proof of him being a lying criminal. He doesn't have jurisdiction. He graduated from Harvard, and he didn't know he has jurisdiction over the United States Constitution. Is that an acceptable legal standard? We should have judges that don't know their jurisdiction. That's a direct question to you. We should have judges, okay, decide cases who don't know they have jurisdiction over the United States Constitution, interpreting it and applying it. Yes or no answer? No, probably not. Let's see what he's saying here. I forget.
Unconstitutional or not, because you claim two separate things here.
Okay, so now he's saying that nowhere in my claim did I ever say excise taxes are unconstitutional. Nowhere. We're talking about my lawsuit here, shithead. I also believe it's just fundamentally wrong to use the tax code to socially reconstruct society. I think that's dangerous. I think the tax code should be used to apply the burden of social infrastructure. Okay, the tax code should not be used by government because it's just a slippery slope. That's what I'm pointing out. It's too fucking dangerous for the government to get into this game. Look what it's done with religion. They give them huge tax breaks. It's completely unfair. We have this idiotic system where, it's a for free, tax-free to have this philosophy, and it's not tax-free to have this philosophy. And that's absolute bullshit. So the tax code shouldn't be used this way. That's what I personally believe. It wasn't in the lawsuit, shithead. We're arguing the lawsuit that you malign and degraded and insulted and mocked. In the lawsuit that you mocked, there's no argument that cigarette taxes are illegal or unconstitutional. In that complaint is the word excessive taxation and disproportional taxation. The argument was about the discrimination. The argument was clearly about the fact that similarly situated vices are not being treated similarly, and the only reason why they're not being treated similarly is because of an unconstitutional extortion and exploitation by the majority. Stay on the subject.
And now Gary's going to go on a rant about what he thinks the tax code should or should not be used for. And you know what? There are valid reasons to be opposed to sin taxes or the tax code being used to encourage or discourage various behaviors. You can make a lot of arguments about that. But guess what? You're not going to be making constitutional ones for the most part. You're not going to be making a constitutional argument there.
Well, I think you are because of the liberty interest. Okay, the liberty interest is a fundamental part of the United States Constitution. Alright, so he says some crap about principles. I guess he doesn't understand that there's principles underlying the basic core of the Constitution, principles about majority exploitation and excesses. And that, that seems a weird word to him, like there's no such thing as a core principle. That concept, core principle, is something no intellectual has ever spoken before. But anyway, who cares? So then he also argues that somehow my point of view against disproportional taxation means I can't be for progressive taxation. No, there's a difference, okay? Equitable distribution of the tax burden, I think, is a rational statement. And equity, in the circumstance of how much money people have and how much money it costs to maintain just the basics of life, and then the rest of the money is spent on what might be considered luxuries. So I would argue that the basic necessities of life, the basic serviceable functional elements of life, should be not taxed, and that only the excess income should be taxed. Only the luxury income should be taxed. So yeah, I'm for a progressive taxation, and I think legacy wealth is essentially breaks the whole game. So yeah, I'm not for any inheritance. But anyway, that's a whole different subject. It's irrelevant, but go ahead, bring it up. I don't care. Poll tax. So he said that it wasn't unconstitutional till they made it unconstitutional. Well, I don't think that's true. I think it was unconstitutional before they made it constitutional. I think the preamble, the first articles of the Constitution explain basically how electors are supposed to be by population. And it just seems that intrinsic in this basic guidepost of what an election's supposed to be is the idea that you do not have a bar that people have to jump over to vote. There's nobody would tolerate having some sort of test, voting test, or voting some other thing. So none of that would have been a part of what would be an open door here. And so I don't know exactly what the history is of it, but obviously it probably went to the courts. The courts said it's a state issue. You know, they ran away from it because they basically gave elections to the state. And then so the Congress had to act because it was, you know, basically the court wasn't going to act or something like that. But in my opinion, the court should have acted and should have defended the idea of one man, one vote and all that bullshit. But whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that poll taxes are bad. And all the other liberties that we should have access to shouldn't also be, there shouldn't be a tax that is onerous and prevents people from having access to liberty. It's just bullshit to say rich people should be allowed to smoke and poor people shouldn't. It's bullshit. It's unconstitutional. It's anti-American, constitutionally consistent. It's inconsistent with the principles of the American Constitution to create a society where liberty isn't something fundamental and something within the reach of all the people, not just the elites. Edible Napalm should be raped in prison for pointing the video to you. No, he should be raped in prison for having you as a friend, for supporting you and defending you in the sense that he calls you friend. I mean, it's disgusting. Okay, he sits there and rags on people like Happy Cabby or Brett Keane. I mean, Brett Keane's politics are far less scary than this motherfucker. I'd rather have Brett Keane as king than this fucking cunt. So yeah, that's what he should be raped in prison for. He should get what he deserves. I can't say it any clearer. He should get what he wishes to impose on other people. So what he defends. This jackass votes against my rights. Why the fuck should I be friends with people who support people who are voting against my fucking rights? Fuck you. Fuck them. Let's see. I don't know what I wrote here. Cult leader. Well, that line could also apply to you, buddy. So it's kind of like what? You know, the blob leading the blind. The slob leading the blind. Find some word. Protest, it appears I said 5% penalty. Oh, we're back to the stupid, never before, only twice in all state history of amnesty laws on taxes was a penalty applied. And it's a huge difference between, when, like I said, when you go to people who are behind in their taxes and you say, look, if you pay the tax right now, okay, we'll take off the penalties and we won't apply the interest. And so just give us the core tax you owe. So it's a huge benefit for people to pay the tax now. That's what all amnesty programs do to get people to pay taxes now. No tax amnesty programs in any other state except for whatever it was, Delaware, ever have applied a penalty for not taking the amnesty. All right? And the point is this, what happens to people who wish to protest the tax, if they sign the amnesty agreement, they are agreeing not to contest the tax. It's part of the amnesty agreement, is that you give away your right to protest the tax. Obviously, you can't go to court if you pay under amnesty. Duh. And that's why it becomes significant, because it's basically an extortion that says you're going to have to pay 5% more tax because you can't pay the tax now and still be in court. Now, if they gave you an exemption that said you may pay this tax, but you still may protest it in court, well, then there wouldn't be a problem, because then I could be immune to the penalty. But I can't gain immunity to the penalty without giving up my right to pursue my legal redress, asshole. So they're penalizing me for protesting the tax. It's that fucking clear. And that's why no other amnesty law has ever done this, is because it creates this conundrum where somebody who wishes to protest the tax is inevitably going to be penalized for it. So fuck you. I would have paid the tax under amnesty if I didn't have to give away my right to continue my lawsuit. He even said that to the judge, you jerk. All right, back to this principled argument again. So now he was, he's taking advantage because I used the word torture or, some other hyperbole or hyperbole to describe the end game of when principles die. When you kill principles, there's a slippery slope, and at the bottom of the slope is always something much worse than what's at the top of the slope. So the point is that, yes, it's a 5% penalty, then it's a 10% penalty, then it's a 50% penalty, then it's whatever they decide to make the penalty. That's the problem. And so it's the principle that's wrong. Threat bargaining is not a legitimate process. You can't do that. You don't go up to people when you bring them into the police station and say, look, if you don't confess, okay, we're going to sit there and send you to our kangaroo court. And if you don't confess now, okay, we're going to double your sentence. You can't do that, okay? That's wrong. That's evil. That's bullshit. That's violating principle. All right, so then he says he's for a tax on meat products and some sort of subsidy for eating vegetarian. I'm not for subsidies for anything. So I don't even agree with you there. So there. Now we still disagree, so I can still oppose you. I don't think you're for any of this shit anyway. I don't think you would vote that way if you were given the choice. So I don't believe you. So there's no point in you saying something that's just completely unbelievable because you're not believable. All right, call me a cheat again, a tax cheat again, because when you buy stuff online, you don't pay sales taxes. So because I, like everybody else, bought things online because I don't pay sales tax. So if you bought something online because sales tax was eliminated for online purchases, he's calling you a tax cheat somehow, even though it was a perfectly legal thing to do. And he's saying that I somehow was supposed to know that it was no longer legal for cigarette smokers to do that, when they passed a law with no public notice whatsoever. I was supposed to know somehow that cigarettes had been exempted from the law, unlike every other online purchase. Yeah, right. Fair cop again. So I think we're back still to the immunity, not immunity, but the stupid threat bargaining bullshit of the tax amnesty program. And he just doesn't get this concept, okay, that you can't take the amnesty without signing a waiver that says you no longer have a right to protest the tax. I've made it clear repeatedly over and over again. I didn't care about the fucking tax, okay? I didn't care about the tax. I cared that the tax was unconstitutional. And that's what I was protesting, is the constitutionality of the tax. That was in my complaint. That was the whole purpose of the lawsuit, is I don't think the tax is constitutional. All right, so there's no reason for me to take amnesty under any circumstance that requires me to give up my right to protest that tax. But he doesn't get it.
Paying the penalty
is he stupid?
For late taxes, and you chose not to take it.
Not for late taxes. It's a penalty for not taking the amnesty, which forces you to give up your right to protest the tax. You just don't get. A lot of people who have a tax liability existing have the tax liability because they're protesting the tax. You stupid fuck. Damn, you're dumb. Not all of them are behind in their taxes just because they don't have the money. Some of them are behind. Some of them owe a tax liability because they don't think they're obligated to pay it because somebody else's tree fell on their property or some other bullshit happened. And, they weren't going to pay for whatever, and they ended up with a tax liability and they said, this is bullshit. I don't owe this fucking tax. But whatever. Ignore that truth. Ignore the real context and just play your stupid, idiotic game. This isn't a hard concept. They don't do this in tax amnesty programs. Again, like I said, none of the other 48 or whatever number of tax amnesty programs that have existed ever had a penalty applied except for one in Delaware. And like I said, I don't even know if that ever became law.
And so he's going to just do this little jerking on motion.
Yes, I will.
To the
Yeah, I don't think you have anything close to this. Okay, I think you have more like this. Yeah, I think that's more your speed. It's this. Yeah, I think that's more like. I don't think you come close to this one, bud. Yeah, fuck you. I guess we're out of time, so we'll load this one up. Sorry, this is going to be preposterously long. I'm only through an hour of this stuff. I really want to get to the part where he talks about his lawyer friend again, because that one's a really good. That might be the place to resolve this, because we can get the old lawyer friend to play along. I'd love to hear the lawyer friend's analysis as a lawyer. I'd love to hear that. But anyway, we'll see.